Welcome back to the another video tutorial from TI Lectures. In this video lecture, we'll be discussing regarding the synaptic transmission mechanism, right? As we know that every cell in our body communicate with one another. Every cell in our body crosstalk between themselves, right? They sense the external environment, what's going on outside the environment, and accordingly they influence their behavior, right? Similarly, जो nerve cells होती हैं, they also communicate with another nerve cells, or they can also communicate with the glands. They also communicate with the muscles, right? At synapses. You got my point? So once we say that जो nerve cells होती हैं, they communicate with another nerve cells, they communicate with muscles, they communicate with glands as well. At synapses. Synapses means, for example, this is one nerve cell, this is the another nerve cell, and this gap is called as synapses, right? So we say that जो nerve cells होती हैं, they communicate with another nerve cell, they can communicate with muscle cells, they can communicate with glands as well at synapse, right? So जो ये synapse होता है, this synapse is structurally, if we see, there are two distinct types of synapses structurally, right? One is called as electrical synapse. One is called as electrical synapse. One is called as electrical synapse, and second one is called as chemical synapse. Second one is called as chemical synapse. Electrical synapse and chemical synapse. So what will happen in the electrical? What is electrical synapse? Electrical synapse means that this is the one neuron, this is the axon, the last portion of the neuron. For example, if we draw a rough diagram of a nerve cell, and this portion is dendrite portion, and this is dendrite portion, and this is axon portion. This portion is axon, right? So this is the axon portion of one neuron, and this is the dendrite portion of another neuron. This is axon portion of one neuron, and this is dendrite portion of another neuron. So what will happen in the electrical synapse? Electrical synapses means when the axon of one neuron influence the dendrite of the another neuron. But here we say that in electrical synapses, there the two neurons, this is the presynaptic neuron, and this is the postsynaptic neuron. The two neurons or the two cells are connected to one another by a gap junction. This is the important point to mention here, that both the cells are connected to one another by a gap junction. Gap junction does not mean that there is a gap. Gap junction means there is no gap between the presynaptic cell and the postsynaptic cell. That means that the cytoplasm of presynaptic cell is directly connected and communicated with the cytoplasm of the postsynaptic cell, right? So in electrical synapses, what will happen? The presynaptic cell is directly connected with the postsynaptic cell by a gap junction. And gap junction does not mean that there is gap. Gap junction means there is no gap. That's cytoplasm of one cell, presynaptic cell, is directly connected to the cytoplasm of the postsynaptic cell. And this electrical synapses, this is mostly seen in the regions of the body, in the areas of the body where we need the critical communication. For example, if we talk of the heart, the muscles of the heart, that means there is electrical synapses going on, because there must be no delay between the one cell and another cell. That means the critical junction we need, where the activation of the one cell will directly lead to the activation of the neighboring cell by a gap junction. You got my point? So what is another kind of synapses here? That is called as chemical synapses. And chemical synapses, chemical synapses में जो presynaptic neuron होता है, in chemical synapses जो presynaptic neuron होता है, this is presynaptic neuron, or presynaptic cell, and this is the postsynaptic neuron and postsynaptic cell. Both these presynaptic and postsynaptic cell in the chemical synapses, they are separated by a gap of approximately 20 to 50 nanometer gap, and that gap is called as synapse. That gap is called as synapse. That means there is a short gap of 20 to 50 nanometer between presynaptic cell and the postsynaptic cell, and that gap is called as synapse, right? And in chemical signal, what will happen once this presynaptic neuron gets activated, and after its activation, certain kinds of molecules are being released into this gap. Certain kinds of molecules are being released into this gap, and those molecules then influence the receptors present on the postsynaptic membrane. Those molecules then influence the receptors or affect the receptors present on where? Present on the postsynaptic neuron, right here. And that means we can say after the activation of the presynaptic neuron, the chemicals are released into the synapses, and those chemicals then affect the receptors present on the postsynaptic neuron, and ultimately that receptor, that ligand receptor interaction will lead to this changing behavior of the postsynaptic neuron. So these were the two important kinds of these synapses. One was electrical synapse, another is chemical synapse. In electrical synapses, both the pre and postsynaptic neurons or cells are connected by a gap junction. There is no gap, directly communication between one cytoplasm and another cytoplasm. And if we talk of the chemical synapses, there is a gap of 20 to 50 nanometer, and in this chemical synapses, the signal is being transduced in the form of chemicals. Right? So in this video lecture, we got a little bit knowledge regarding the two distinct types of, virtually two distinct types of synapses, electrical and chemical synapses. In the next video lecture, we'll discuss in detail regarding the synaptic transmission, how the signal from the one neuron is conveyed to this another neuron, or is conveyed to the gland, or is conveyed to the muscle. Thank you.